Welcome to the Pan Am Football Mock Draft Hub. All 2021 mock draft coverage can be found right here, including weekly mock drafts, prospect evaluations, and general draft and team building topics. Alright, welcome back to the Mock Draft Hub here at Pan Am Football. I'm Max Dean, and today we are going to be doing the NFL 2021 Mock Draft version 1.4. So this takes into account all of the Week 13 games, both in terms of draft order, I believe as long as the Draft Network here has their order updated, as well as the state of each franchise. Now, for now, I'm going to continue doing this format where I'm using the Draft Network's mock draft machine. It's quick, simple, and I've got a lot going on. So this is probably the easiest way to get these drafts done in the regular season since, for now, again, I'm not going to be doing trades. I will do mock drafts with trades. I'll mess with the format a little bit as we finish the season, but for now, there's going to be a lot of turnover with head coaches and general managers, which is going to tell us a lot about what's going to happen in the draft. Now, on that note, throw a like if you don't mind. It helps me just get stuff done. It helps push me along. It's another late night, per usual. And subscribe if you like what you see because we're going to be doing all kinds of mock draft stuff as the season progresses and so much more when the season is over. Of course, you'll also find the Pan Am Football Show, which is a podcast that I do with Seth and Jeff Hudson. We do it twice a week for reviews and previews. And on the note of GM and coaching changes, you will also be able to find a video that I just did, at least part one, which is the NFL coaching carousel and GM carousel. So we'll be talking about the coaches and GMs that have been fired, that are going to be fired, and the desirability of each position as well as prospects to come in and fill those positions. So you'll be able to find part one probably as soon as this mock draft is uploaded. Okay, and the last note before I kick it off, let me know in the comments if you like the pick, if you dislike the pick, who your favorite team is, and if you didn't like the pick, what would you do instead? And if you want to say that you would trade back, go for it. I understand. It's just I'm not going to be doing any trades for now. Okay, kicking it off, I'm not going to spend time on a pick that's been talked to death. Jets maintain their pick first overall barely, so that's going to be Trevor Lawrence. And the Jags barely maintain pick number 2. Now, I say barely. There's a little leeway, but they almost won a game, so they're going to be taking Justin Fields because he's probably the best option for a guy who will come in and actually round out what's looking like a relatively complete team for a team that's lost so many games. The Bengals pick, it's going to be very similar. I'm probably not going to be messing with the picks for these top 3, especially if they stay in this order, because they make too much sense for the teams as we stand. The Bengals are going to be taking Penei Sewell, because obviously Burrow got a bad injury. It wasn't a freak injury. He got hit. He got hit a lot. And they need to protect him desperately. It's an incredibly important step that they need to take to solidify their franchise quarterback situation. They got the guy, now protect him. The Chargers would have loved to have gotten Penei Sewell. Now, they do need a tackle, especially on the left side. With no trades, I think 4 is a little high to go for a tackle, especially because we're going to be looking way down here till, at least according to these rankings, we're going to be looking at these guys, these tackles. Christian Darrisaw, Samuel Cosme, and there's a few other guys, Eichenberg, I like a lot, and Mayfield from Michigan. But for the 4th overall pick, we're going to be looking for more of an impact position, but a player who rates a little bit more highly. I don't think you want to go Jamar Chase. Justin Herbert has shown that he can do a lot with what he's already got. I'm not saying don't continue to add weapons, but again, I just don't think the 4th overall pick is where you need to do that. They could use another edge player to go along with the very, very pricey Joey Bosa. But as far as they're concerned, I would be more interested in trying to bring back Melvin Ingram or get a complimentary guy. This would be a nice pairing, or even Kwity Paye if you don't want to take the risk of Gregory Rousseau, which I understand. But what you really need here is cornerback help. Casey Hayward's getting older. They are getting torched a bit. They did just lose without putting up any points to what's been a relatively lackluster Patriots team. So what I'm going to be looking at here is cornerback. You can either go Caleb Farley or Patrick Surtain. I don't know if you've watched my mock drafts before, but if you have, Patrick Surtain he's a more technically refined corner, a bit more immediately ready. Caleb Farley has set out this year, so that's a little bit of a risk, but also he is very, very high upside physically speaking. So I think that I would go Patrick Surtain if I'm picking at this position, just a little bit more guaranteed. I really like Surtain as a prospect. The Dallas Cowboys, they could use cornerback help as well, but I think that, it's a little bit complicated because the Cowboys have Aldon Smith, and I'm just not sure how I feel about that being like a guy you're relying on going forward. It was all well and good that they were able to get him to come off of his suspension this year, but or reinstated or whatever the case was exactly. I forget what his details were, but I'm looking for an edge player. It's the second most important position in the NFL, and Tank Lawrence is fine. Sometimes he wrecks a game and sometimes he's a little invisible. I want an inexpensive guy to pair with him. It will change the makeup of their defense dramatically. So I'm going to go with what I think is a slightly smarter situation with Kwity Paye, the edge player from Michigan here. Philadelphia Eagles, they went wide receiver last year. They clearly need wide receiver help. Do they go wide receiver in the first round back-to-back years? I don't know. The Eagles never go with linebackers in the first round. They never do it. Now, I might consider changing that, except not at 6th overall. I think they believe in the analytics a little bit too much to do that. They've been against it in the first round period. I don't think they're going to turn around so much so that they're taking Micah Parsons 6th overall. I don't think that Gregory Rousseau is that big of a need. I think they could use a cornerback, but again, it's not as big of a need. So based on what is here at the top of the prospect list, again, they could use offensive line help for sure. For a team that's been such a good offensive line, they've had so many injuries that solidifying that might be a wise choice. But out of everything that's here, I think the position that they need the most help with, despite the fact that they went in the first round last year, they need guys. They don't have the salary cap to go out and sign them. So we're going to go with Jamar Chase here. You're going to have wide receiver 1 to pair with the deep threat that is Jalen Reagor, and suddenly that is a very dynamic pairing at the wide receiver position. Okay, so then we have the Carolina Panthers, who I have been saying for quite a while need offensive tackle help. I really want to get them an offensive tackle. Russell Okung, getting old, has had injury issues throughout his career. Again, no trades. So what do? Do we reach with what they've got on the board? I don't think they're going to go linebacker because they've got Jeremy Chin, who can move all over the place, playing linebacker as well. They've got Shaq Thompson. I just don't think that this changes the makeup of their team. Whereas cornerback might do that. Now, I would prefer offensive line help, but again, we're gonna take into consideration where they're drafting. So I'm not just gonna reach for a player, because if the draft rolls around and they're in this position and things fall like this and no one wants to make a trade, you can't force it to happen. So we're just gonna do what we would do in that situation, and we're gonna take Caleb Farley, the cornerback out of Virginia Tech. Okay, the Atlanta Falcons, Gregory Rousseau, easy choice. He's still there. They need an edge player desperately. They're going to continue with Matt Ryan here at this point. I've gone back and forth about drafting a quarterback to move on with, but again, this is a big question with the coach and GM coming on board. Let's assume for this particular mock draft that they're going to make a bit of a push to be competitive with Matt Ryan and Julio Jones still on board, so they are going to get a big-time edge player from Miami. Miami Dolphins. This is the pick that they got from the Houston Texans, and taking a linebacker in the top 10 is not always the best decision. However, it's a really, really nice fit for this team. They could use a wide receiver, but it's a fairly solid wide receiver class. And so, considering they have another first-round pick and multiple second-round picks as well, you can get that a little bit later. There is not going to be a linebacker that's anything like Micah Parsons when they draft later, most likely. So they go Micah Parsons out of Penn State to fill in the center of their defense. A defense that is already good, but I think will take another step with a player like Parsons. The Washington football team, quarterback, easy choice. We're going to go, it's easy decision to go with quarterback. Then the question is, which one do you want to go with? Do you like Trey Lance, who would be much more similar to the Cam Newton type of player that they had, or that Ron Rivera had in Carolina? Or do you want to go with Zach Wilson, the gunslinger leader from BYU? It's a pick your poison. Now, not poison, but pick your flavor. I'm going to go with Wilson, as I've been going with a couple of guys who have played more this year. Trey Lance didn't opt out, but he only had one game to show off what he had, whereas Wilson has been playing well all year. The Denver Broncos at pick number 11. Let's see here. They need a cornerback. They did extend Garrett Bowles, which has changed what I've done for them, or which changes what I have done for them in a few other mock drafts. Tackle doesn't become quite as much of a need. They have Juwan James coming back from the opt-out. I'm not totally sure what I would do if I were them. I haven't looked at what Juwan James' salary cap situation is in a little while. So I don't think Drew Lock is the guy. So we're going to take another swing. I know a lot of people may disagree. I just don't believe in him. And if you've got Trey Lance still available, now in real time, my guess is probably there will be some trades going on to get quarterbacks. But if he's there, we're going to take him. He's still a big-armed guy, but he's got a little bit more proven coming into the NFL than Drew Lock did, I believe, when he came out of Missouri. Okay, number 12, the Detroit Lions. What are they going to do at coach and GM? I don't know. When they come in, what are they going to do with the quarterback position? I don't know. Probably they'll roll with Matt Stafford. Picking at 12 is not really a guarantee for a quarterback unless you really want to trade up. I would rather go with what you got, re-sign Kenny Galladay, and try and move forward. Yes, their defense needs help. They need an interior defensive lineman, but I can't go 12 for J2 Vele. There's too many good players between there. And so I'm going to do what I've been doing for them for a little while, and we're going to go with Jalen Waddle, who is an excellent pairing with Kenny Galladay. Galladay wins with size, physicality, contested balls, and that's how he wins deep. But Waddle is a totally different type of player, adds a lot of speed to the receiver position, and it really helps round out a nice offensive skill group. You just hope that a coach can come in and change the effectiveness of what they already have, because there is talent. Chicago Bears, they are kicking themselves for winning a couple too many games, well, in this situation, in this theoretical situation, and not getting themselves into the quarterback sweepstakes. So, they may trade up, or they may trade for another player if possible. They could make a push for a guy like Matt Ryan. They could make a push for a guy like, depending on if their coach and GM get fired like I think they should, they may get a guy who has been familiar with I think there's a possibility that they might get a guy like Robert Saleh to come in and get a little bit younger on defense, but also maybe they'll bring in Jimmy Garoppolo, something like that. But anyway, they're not going to be going quarterback here just because there is not a guy on the board available. So now that we're at 13, let's look at getting in some offensive line help. I think we can go with Christian Darrisaw, the tackle out of Virginia Tech here. We could look at a wide receiver, since we're not really sure what's going to be going on with Allen Robinson. They have Darnell Mooney, though. And so I think the best matching with him would be a guy who's more in the vein of a Rashad Bateman type player. But you need to look at the foundational positions, which are the offensive and defensive line. And so we're going to be looking at tackle, Christian Darrisaw. Can play left tackle, or you can have him at the right tackle position if you so decide, if you feel like that's the best place for him based on what they already have there. Number 14, we have the San Francisco 49ers. They do need interior offensive line help. Last year, I mocked Tristan Wirfs to them, and I had them put him at guard, which would have been really dynamic for their outside zone scheme. And he was available, and I think, I really thought they were going to go with him. They ended up trading back one spot and taking Javon Kinlaw. I think basically they told the Bucs, they said, we're going to take Tristan Wirfs unless you want to come up and get him, because we'll move back one spot and take the other player. I think that's the only reason they got them to move up like that. Just my guess, anyway. Irrelevant. So interior offensive line is definitely something that I agree with here as far as a need. They do need a cornerback as well. They could look at a guy like J.C. Horn out of South Carolina. I like him. But they also could go for a guy like Wyatt Davis, the excellent road grader guard out of Ohio State. It would help their offense a lot, and since they don't have a plus player at quarterback, they may want to just double down on the outside zone running. It's been pretty effective, but they could definitely improve this position if they want to do that. The reason I've been saying cornerback for quite a while is because they have to pay so many players. And they already have paid so many players, but they might be able to make some stuff work if they decide to move on from D Ford. Just to mix things up a little bit, we'll go with Wyatt Davis for them. I know 14's a little high for a guard, but not too high. We've gone back and forth with a couple of different skill players for the Cardinals, but truthfully, honestly, they could use offensive line help, especially interior offensive line, probably not tackle. But now that I've taken Wyatt Davis, I'm not sure that there is an interior offensive lineman who makes sense as much as these guys do. Now, they have wide receivers, so we're not going to go that route. I think Kyle Pitts or Travis Etienne make a lot of sense for them. They could also go defense and maybe go with an edge player or a cornerback. Let's go with cornerback since it's something I haven't been doing for a while for them. We're going to go J.C. Horn out of South Carolina. A very good cornerback prospect. You know, you can kind of say, well, their offense has been good. Do they really need to add? I think it would be a strength on strength, which would help. But you do need to get better on the back end of your defense. You got Budda Baker, who's a nice player. You got Byron Murphy, who you can keep in the slot. But I guess you do need somebody younger to play the outside corner position. New England Patriots at pick 16. You know, a lot of people would say Kyle Pitts. They brought in so many tight ends over the past year or two, though. I don't know if that's where they go. Belichick used to really like Florida players, but that was back when Urban Meyer was there for a while. Now he really prefers to go with guys who are from bigger programs with really successful coaching staffs. So I feel like Devontae Smith is the type of guy he might want to go for. Or he may want to look at the defense as well. You know, they have some good cornerbacks in New England already, but they have only one under contract out of those three big guys for 2021, and they may move on from him. He's getting older. He's over 30. I'm not sure we'll go corner in this particular mock draft here, so I think we're going to go with Devontae Smith. They do need more skill players. I just don't really know. It depends on what they do at quarterback. So if they bring back Cam Newton, I don't think they're going to go Devontae Smith. They're going to want a guy who's better blocking on the edges, which may be more of a Rashad Bateman type. Without really knowing what they want to do, though, then we're going to go with the Alabama prospect, Devontae Smith. Add some speed, just improve the skill positions. Baltimore Ravens at 17. Let's see here. All right. I've gone edge pretty consistently for them. Especially, I think Joseph Ossai is a really nice fit. Because he fits that rush linebacker mold really, really well. He's a high motor guy. I think that they would like him. They could use a safety, but this is true. They could use a safety, but not as much as edge because they've got guys who are going to be moving on in free agency. At least one. They do need wide receiver help though as well. I didn't really watch the game tonight, so I'm not sure how they looked with all of that. But I'm going to go with edge here. One of my favorite players here would be Joseph Ossai. All right. Oakland Raiders. I keep coming back to this. Because they're picking around the right area for it, they just need interior offensive line help. They got pushed around by the Jets. Pushed around in the run game. They need a really good defensive lineman. They've got some guys who can rush the passer, Max Crosby, and actually Cleveland Farrell. God knows how you pronounce his name, but he actually got some pass rush going this past Sunday, but they got pushed around. So this just reiterates that need to me. The New York Giants, pick 19. Let's see. Can they find a nice rush linebacker for their defense? Not really. We could go Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, or we could go Rashad Bateman, or we could go Eric Stokes. They need a cornerback, which would be a nice pairing with James Bradbury. Bradbury's been playing very well, but I think that you would like to solidify the back end. They could really use a wide receiver, though, too. We're going to go wide receiver because if they want to go with Daniel Jones another year, they need to really give him everything that they can. Their offensive line hasn't been great, but they invested heavily into it, so you're hoping that it improves after another year. So we're going to go with Rashad Bateman, even though I do think cornerback would be a nice investment for them as well. But this is just going to help Daniel Jones be his best Jonesy self. So for them, hopefully that works out well. Pick number 20, we have the Minnesota Vikings. They do need offensive line help. Who's here? We can go Sam Cosmi. I know tackle isn't like the biggest need, but without Jay Tufele, I'm not reaching for a defensive lineman. They have some good linebackers unless they end up releasing some guys to save cap space. They could use a quarterback, certainly, but they are most likely stuck with Kirk Cousins for at least one more year. And then wide receiver, they're good. They could use a tight end. I'm not really sure that they would go tight end with a first round pick. It's not something that they've been known to do in that organization or front office. So I'd be leaning towards offensive line just based on what I know of them. Make the most out of Dalvin Cook as well. I think that's what we're going to do. We're going to go Samuel Cosmi, tackle out of Texas. You can move guys around, just make it work. I'm not saying left tackle is their biggest need, but add a talented player with a lot of athleticism and make it work. Like shuffle the linemen around and make it work. Okay, next up we have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at pick number 21. Let's do something a little bit different for them. They have a solid team, so where do they... Basically, the question with them is not where do they need help so much as where do they need to replace an expensive player. Edge is definitely one of those places. I think Azeez Ojulari would be a guy like that, or Jason Owe, because they have Shaq Barrett, who might be the guy that they need to pay, but then they're going to have to drop off a couple other guys. Like, I don't think they can do Jason Pierre-Paul and Shaq Barrett another year in a row. So let's say they want to keep the pass rush alive, but they've got to let one go. So they pay Barrett, they release Pierre-Paul, and then they're gonna go with Ojulari. I've mocked them Travis Etienne before, or Travis Etienne, because they could really use a pass-catching running back. I don't know if it's the smartest thing, really. It's a big need. I just don't know if it's the smartest thing. Okay, so let's slide back down. They could go tight end, just because, you thought that they were really loaded there, and it turned out to not really be the case. Next year, if they do roll with, Kyle Pitts is an interesting option too. If you don't know how Jordan Howard's going to be when he comes back, Jordan Howard, is that even right? OJ Howard. You don't know how OJ Howard is going to be when he comes back from his injury. You don't know how, you know. So you got him, I guess, under contract for another year. Or maybe, let me just look that up real quick. What's. I'm going to check this. Oops, just hit the mic. Okay. Drafted in 2017. And now let's see, did they pick up his option? Should know this off the top of my head, but I don't. They exercised the 5th-year option. So they have him under contract for 2020. So they got him, they got Cameron Brate. I believe that Gronk will be a free agent, and honestly, most likely will re-retire. Maybe not. I guess maybe not. We're not going to try Kyle Pitts. So we're going to look back at what I was just saying a minute ago, and we're going to go with a pass rusher. So we're going to go with Ojulari. The Miami Dolphins. This is where they're going to have the option to go wide receiver and help out that need. Now, they could go interior offensive line as well, but there are really good wide receivers still on the board. Let's see. They could go with the center, but let's do Terrace Marshall Jr. out of LSU. Is having a great year, would bolster that receiving core significantly. Okay, the Indianapolis Colts, they need a quarterback. They will do something with a trade for a player, whether it is a guy like Matt Ryan or Matthew Stafford, or maybe a guy like Sam Darnold, or maybe even a guy like Carson Wentz. I don't think he's really tradable based on his contract, but I know that Frank Reich has familiarity with him. Now, that being said, they still have their first round pick here. Let's look at offensive tackle. It was brought to my attention fairly recently that Costanzo had considered retiring and decided not to, got an extension. He may retire, he may not. But even if he doesn't, it's great to have a guy to be ready, to take over that position. So let's look at Rashawn Slater. Mayfield is really good. He's played right tackle, and I would, without really doing a deep dive on him, I just don't know if he's really ready to jump over to left tackle. So we're gonna draft him maybe with a team that's looking for a right tackle right off the bat. But we're gonna do Rashawn Slater here. Just clicking things all over the place. We're gonna go with Rashawn Slater for the Colts, and he may play right away, left tackle right away, or he may play right tackle for a year before Costanzo moves on. Okay, these guys, the Tennessee Titans, they need a pass rush. They need it. It's become totally untenable, and we kind of knew that. We're going to go with Aiden Hutchinson, bigger edge player out of Michigan here. There really almost isn't another position that they can even consider looking at. Now, the Jets at pick 25, this is the pick that they got from the Seahawks. They could go corner, they could go offensive skill, or they could go pass rusher. And there's probably more in the way of really corner. They could go offensive line too, but I think this has been probably, I think the two biggest weaknesses that they have on their team are edge and corner. Edge is more important, but we'd have to drop farther in terms of prospect, at least according to this board, to get there. So we're going to go with Eric Stokes, the corner out of Georgia. Jaguars, picking at 26 with the pick that they got from the Rams. They need a tackle. They need a tackle to help protect their quarterback investment. Let's go with Jalen Mayfield here. They have a left tackle, and you can play Mayfield at right tackle with him, and then maybe if Mayfield looks good or better, you can move him over later. The Bills could go corner, but we've kind of used up a lot of the top guys. Shaun Wade is more of an interior cover guy. He's moved outside, but he just hasn't been as good, so we're going to look at him mostly as a nickel corner, which, like I've said before, does have value. Let's pop through this. Let's see. We can go tackle, though. Or we could go a linebacker. Well, they went linebacker in the first round fairly recently. Probably not the wisest choice. They've made some investments at running back. I think a couple of third-round picks recently. They could use a right tackle. Could go Eichenberg. Could use a little interior offensive line. That wouldn't hurt either. Could drop down and grab Kendrick or Asante Samuel Jr. I like Asante Samuel Jr. I really do. I think this could be the type of player that they really like in Buffalo as well. I'm going to reach or call it reaching a little, which I'm fine with. When we get down to this position, I'm not that worked up about it. All right. Cleveland Browns picking at 28, which is funny to look at. I'm not sure they'll really pick this high, but they're almost certainly going to the playoffs, which is fun. Let's bolster their linebacking unit with Owusu Koromoa. I think that's a good pick for them. They could, they just drafted a left tackle. They signed a right tackle for a fair amount of money. They have a really good offensive line in general, so we're not really going to look at that. They could use a corner, but Shaun Wade's more of an inside guy. That's not what we're looking at. They went tight end. They signed a tight end. Drafted one. Not super high last year, but they drafted one reasonably high. Signed one. Yeah, I think that's the right pick. We're going to go with a linebacker here. That's going to improve their defense. I know they're really analytics driven, so this might not be an accurate pick for them, but for now we're going to roll with it. They may sign some guys in free agency where it makes that a little bit less of a need. They have space. I'm not sure exactly what the Browns will do. I'm very curious to see how they play in the playoffs, though. For a team that's been out of it for so long, I kind of hope they win at least one game. Would be really fun for the Browns fan base. Green Bay Packers. Liam Eichenberg. I want another tackle for them. I really want another tackle. If you want reasons why, I've said before, I don't want to spend too much time saying the same stuff again. But they have Bakhtiari on the left side, and I think I called him Tim Kelly before, but it's not Tim Kelly. I don't know why I've struggled to remember his name, but he was the backup right tackle for the Titans, and he played in reserve for them a little bit, and then he ended up getting signed to replace Brian Bulaga, and I just want somebody better to protect Aaron Rodgers and or Jordan Love or whoever ends up playing snaps there. So we're going with Liam Eichenberg. Kansas City Chiefs. We're going to go with... We could keep going offense here. Where's the next best wide receiver? He's a ways down. We could go Chris Olave. They do need corner help. Alex Leatherwood. They could go tackle and get cheaper there. They could go linebacker. I think eventually you want to spend... they're a really, really unique team. I want to see what they do in free agency because they need more wide receivers to replace guys that will probably move on. And I would love for them to just keep adding to that. You have a really unique advantage with Patrick Mahomes. So to really utilize him properly, you need guys who are just going to keep getting open and keep getting open. So in the same way that maybe Clyde Edwards-Helaire was a slight reach last year, but still a good pick for them, Olave might be the same type of situation. So we're going to go Chris Olave out of Ohio State for them. The New Orleans Saints. Again, who the heck knows? We're going to go tight end. We're going to go Kyle Pitts because he's fallen down, and he is Jared Cook is almost certainly going to get released, so I would like to have a nice athletic player there for them. And finally, just to round it out without going too long, I know that they could use offensive line help, and they don't have really money to re-sign guys. They're letting guys walk. I'm not sure exactly how they'll figure that out, but what I will say is they have basically no run game. James Conner is a fine player, but I think Travis Etienne would be a really big upgrade there, and especially if you're going to roll with Big Ben, it'd be nice to take a little pressure off him. So we are going to take Travis Etienne for the Pittsburgh Steelers, picking 32 overall. All right, you can look over here briefly if you need a little bit of a recap. Again, like, subscribe if you so choose. Likes very much appreciated. Very easy to do. And if you do like what I got going on, hit subscribe. And of course, in the comments, agree, disagree. Who's your favorite team? If you disagree, who would you pick instead? All right, thanks guys, and I will see you next week.